My name is Daniëlle Nel, and everybody calls me Danny. I'm a versatile editor, so I do the technical, but I also do the creative. I've recently started post supervising, and I've been involved in post for about 20 plus years.
Oh, very cool. and you're in South Africa, right? You're
in Cape Town. I'm based in Cape Town, yes.
Very cool. Well, my name's Payton List. I am originally from Chicago. I am out in Los Angeles. And I've kind of done a lot of little random stuff too. I started in camera and in prep as a prep tech as well. And then I moved into dailies and kind of worked my way up in there, dailies workflow and workflow management and learning all the post processes. And now I work at Fox as a director of post and production technology. So I'm managing a big team of technology gurus, but also creative editors and promo people and all sorts of fun stuff. So I just started there a couple months ago. So
oh wow, yeah. So when I would imagine that with being in the post technology that you're now doing, it's very much like an administrative role, or do you actually sit with somebody and like this workflow doesn't work? Do you help problem solve it, or do you just get people to do the problem solving for you?
I am very hands-on. I like all the nerdy stuff, so I like to be involved in that. And so yeah, I'm helping design workflows still, new workflows, helping test out new technology, new software. It's a great team, so we get to like experiment and test like all the new up and coming gear and meet with vendors and all sorts of fun stuff. So yeah, I'm very hands-on and I like working with the team. Yeah, I guess defining, what a workflow is to us, I think it's a broad subject, with all this digital technology and everything constantly changing at a very fast pace. You need people like us who are interested in problem solving and kind of figuring out, processes from start to finish and making sure that all the steps in between promote the best kind of most efficient way of working and, create. And a lot of my mentality is, how do I help creatives do their job without having to worry about all that technical side of things, and work efficiently. And, a lot of it's for me is like working globally, like everything, like the film industry is very global now as well. And so there's a lot of like, how do we work with these people in this country? Well, this editing is going on here and shooting is there and bringing it all, dailies are there and bringing it all together. There's a lot of logistical workflow as well behind that, not just technical, but yeah.
Yeah, I would say probably about 90% of dailies in South Africa is generated through Resolve,
Oh.
And the other 10% would be things like Inside Premiere or Inside Avid, or color front is usually on your blue chip $100 million series, that sort of thing. I recently worked on an American film. There's an editor that I worked with him while he was working in South Africa, and so he's like, Danny, I need you. And that film that wasn't that well equipped to create proxies for me. So I actually said to them, but guys, we're shooting on a red. Why don't we do the proxies in camera? It's a risk, but hey, why don't we try it? you know, and we did the entire film with proxies in camera.
Oh,
it was fine, you know. Okay, so the only disadvantage of that is not having the burn-ins. So most of your shows now, they want the burn-ins, they want the clip name, they want the source time code, and then sometimes they give you the C number, the take number, and all those sorts of things. But I mean, if the metadata is there, why not? You know.
Yeah, I think as long as someone is like keeping an eye on the original camera and negative, because I think that to me is the only fear I've ever had of using the proxies in camera, is just making sure that the original camera files are intact, nothing's corrupt. But it's a great workflow, especially for like reality shows. When they're shooting, you know, like a billion camera, like 10 cameras, like long period of time, like you don't want to like spend hours and hours and hours transcoding if you don't have the time, you know. If you can work with those proxies and then just conform back to the 4K media or whatnot.
Actually, quite interesting. I know that Survivor South Africa is being shot here. So what they do is they don't go back to the camera originals at all. They transcode to DNX 120 and without a LUTs or burn-ins or anything, and they cut the entire episode, and then when it's time to grade, I suppose, they grade the DNX 120s because it's good enough for broadcast, right? So I mean, there's small little kinks that you can you figure out as you go along. You know, you have to like miss a step somewhere at some stage, depending on what the budget is, and depending on what the time frame is, and depending on, you know, how many shortcuts do you want to follow, you know?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually, one of my first big travel jobs was as a supervisor for dailies, was actually the show Dominion that was shot in South Africa.
Oh wow!
And so I got to go out there and travel and set up the workflow with some local talent, and the challenge with that show was that they really wanted to take advantage of the time change. So they would shoot and they would want the dailies processed and then sent back to editors in Los Angeles who could start literally the same day as the shoot was going on. It was pretty wild to see that happen. And yeah, because of the time change, it worked out where they're like, oh, well, we can get dailies same day, like before our workday is over. Let's do that. And so yeah, we had to figure out a system. And I don't know if it's still like this in Cape Town, where it's very expensive to like send media over the internet because it's charged like per gig rather than like your bandwidth.
Yeah, it's still per gig. And it depends on what your post facility is, but the price has come down. So it's not as expensive as it once was, because of course, you know, the prices has come down. But with regards to that workflow that you're now speaking about, like overnight, I was working on this one film where the DIT was creating the dailies. I'm used to working with the lab. So, you know, when the hard drive comes from set or the mags come from set, you know, the boys start with dailies, and the next morning I'm in and there's my dailies. It's done. It's delivered, right? So this only did half a day. So you'll only process half the day. And I'm like, I don't understand why you're doing this. This is foreign to me. Why are you only processing half a day? How do I keep track of what is there? It's like, and there was cost saving, because I mean, you can't get that to work 24 hours. And if you do, you run the risk of them also messing messing something up, because something is supposed to go wrong, you know. So yeah, I mean, again, it's this one person versus a lab. I'm used to working with the lab. Like, you probably would have worked with the lab on Dominion, right?
Yeah, so we were kind of the lab. We were partnering with some people in South Africa. And then I came out to like train the dailies techs and help set up that pipeline to be that lab. And yeah, it was really cool. I loved it there. I loved Cape Town. It was beautiful.
I'm so glad you know my city.
I would love to go back. Seriously, it was awesome.
So just organize a shoot here, and we'll set you up on this side.
Sounds good. Yeah, that would be great. It's just a very long flight.
I'm looking forward to coming to visit LA one day.
You're welcome to come. I'll show you around.
Lovely. So I'm a freelancer, but I'm based in at a post facility, and I am the person that they come to for testing workflows. Cool. The other day I needed to figure out a workflow for getting visual effects names into the baselight, but properly, not, oh, we're just going to pop a marker on here and hope for the best, you know. So yeah, I literally, I will hit my head against the wall for hours and hours and hours until I get it right, you know. And something that I find quite interesting is a lot of these workflows that I'm sure that you also work with, there's no documentation online. Like, you're on your own, buddy. Like, I contacted, I'm also a Resolve trainer. So I contacted the Resolved Trainers group, and I asked them, listen, guys, I'm struggling to design a workflow for creating visual effects pools. So in other words, get the visual effects name either out of Avid or Premiere, and then into Resolve to now do these visual effects pools. Okay. And I kid you not, there was nobody that could help me. So I'm like, okay, nobody has this information. Let's figure this out. And I made a little workflow for it, and I shared it with the trainers. Not that I think that they'll use it, but I felt like, yes, I made it. I figured it out.
That's amazing. So yeah, do you have to travel for your job a lot, or you're mostly in
I'm mostly based in Cape Town. I do travel on occasion. So I have done a few shows in Johannesburg, which is about a 2-hour flight from Cape Town. And then I have traveled abroad for work. So I've worked in Europe, specifically Germany, Sweden. I've worked in the UK. I've worked in the States. I've also worked in India, Malaysia.
Wow.
I mean, it's
cool.
It sounds glamorous, but it.
It gets exhausting, honestly. I mean, I think before COVID and before I changed jobs, yeah, I was probably traveling almost 6 months out of the year. Yeah, and I love to travel, but it gets a little lonely, especially I feel like our jobs are very isolated in a way. Rather, if you're traveling with a big production that you're around, it's a little different. But yeah, so traveling gets a little tough.
I do like the team dynamic when you do traveling. You know, you almost feel like you're this little family that.
Yeah.
Although on my days off, I don't want to see them. I'm like, go away.
Yeah.
I don't want to see you.
Yeah, it's because it's so long hours in this field. I would say, like, post-production long hours.
I mean, I don't mind long hours. I have, now that I'm a little bit older, I get to a point where my brain just doesn't work anymore. Then I'm like, this is counterintuitive. I actually just stop there. I'm like, anything that I'm going to do from now on is going to be a disaster. So let's just go home. Let's get some sleep. Let's get some food. And then tomorrow's another day. But I mean, 20 years ago, I would just go like 3 days on the trot, no sleep, nothing, and you just go. And I guess that saying like your 20s is to kind of figure out how far you can push your body, and your 30s is to sort of learn to say no. I'm yet to know what you're supposed to learn when you're in your 40s. I suppose it has to do with your health, like make sure that your health stays intact. But I think one of the things that we do neglect quite a lot is not taking care of ourselves, like the job comes first and like screw everything else.
It's funny. I just started seeing a life coach, and it was funny. I was joking yesterday because she was originally in the film industry, and then she went to do this life coaching job because she was passionate about it. And we were joking. We're like, some days you forget to even get up and go to the bathroom. Like, and you're like, I have to go to the bathroom. And then it's 3 hours later. You're like, oh God, we're like destroying our kidneys. So like I've been, as like you're saying, like as I'm getting older, I'm realizing you have to have those boundaries. You have to be able to get some water and get snacks and get up, go take a walk, have some sunshine. A lot of times we're in all these dark rooms, working on this stuff and forget that there's an outside world. I try to get outside as much as I can before work, and get some nature to keep that sanity, and try to have a bit more boundaries when I get home. In dailies, it was very hard because, especially if you're supervising a dailies technician, you're kind of always on call to help them. I don't know if this is how it was.
Absolutely.
To support them, and you want to support them. So you're waking up all night, like helping them fix tech issues and that sort of thing. So you're kind of never, your nervous system's never kind of calm and never away from it. So now I'm trying to set those boundaries with myself, and and I have the luxury of having more of a management job now, so it's not as directly related to the overnight staff, even though we do have people working around the clock in our department. So I'm thankful for that. As I get older, to have a little bit more work-life balance. But I think that's something I'm trying to impart on the people I work with, is like, have some boundaries for yourself, and get some sleep, like encourage them to take a break, take time off. Like, we'll figure it out. This job's not going to go away. you're not going to lose.
You're not doing brain surgery, right? But it's only entertainment, and
Exactly.
So if something is slightly late, I mean, like, it's only entertainment.
Exactly. I started in the medical field before I was in the industry. So I kind of try to remember that. I mean, it was like 20 years ago, but I try to have that perspective in my brain, like, okay, there aren't real like issues on the line right now. It's just TV.
I guess, I mean, we do tend to crises, like somebody deleted a card, or like the card is corrupt, or like for some other reason, the avid just keeps on corrupting clips, or I mean, like, things happen. right?
Mhm.
And what I found was to sort of when because I'm the person that helps fix these things. So I usually go, okay, so what's the problem? And then I try and get some space between it, not try and hit my head against the wall right there and then. I take a walk, I go to the bathroom, whatever, and then for something in my brain goes click, and then you usually go through the things. Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? You know, like, and if you've done this a couple of times, you know what the things are to look for, and if you've run through that list and you then don't have an answer, maybe you should look for the answer tomorrow morning when you wake up, you know, because if you're not seeing it right away, you're not going to see it at all for the next hour or two, you know, like,
Yeah,
it's
that's a good point. Yeah.
it's just to give that sort of spacing. Like, I find I do sometimes when I design workflows, especially when it's quite intricate, you know, something with lots of visual effects, and like, how are we going to like do this? And I sometimes actually leave it for a day or two, and I promise you, my brain just goes click. Oh, this is what we're going to do. Okay, I got it now. I got it. So I just thought, I'm not doing something about it. I'm brooding, and I suppose editors do the same thing when you edit. You think about the story, and you're not looking at the scene, because this scene is problematic, and I actually don't know what to do with the scene. But then you wake up one morning and you kind of go, boom, this scene now makes sense, you know, like.
Giving yourself some space and time. Like sometimes if there's too much pressure on yourself to figure something out, like you can't think or process straight. And so giving yourself that space to kind of like calm down and think about it in a relaxed state of mind, I think is great advice. And yeah, when I first started in dailies, like I wasn't very computer, like I was computer nerdy, but like I wasn't as computer technical starting out. And so like the idea of breaking something down into steps was for problem solving when it came to like weird issues that software would have, like was a really hard concept until it like clicked. And I'm like, oh, so you just, you know, break it down and you find the exact point where there is an issue.
Problem, yes.
Yeah, rather than kind of trying to repeat the same thing over and over again. So like breaking things down into steps. And then, like you said, if that doesn't work, sitting with it. Or if it's a really urgent situation, like you mentioned earlier, going directly to like someone who's an expert on that software or specific thing that you're working on, like knowing to go to resolve when you're having this issue with resolve that you can't figure out on your own, like knowing who to go to help you. Also, like not spending too much time dwelling on it if it's urgent, knowing who to go to or knowing to ask someone who knows to go to someone. A lot of times, like for instance, you know, we used Colorfront a lot, and Colorfront was really great with their support, and that like they had someone that would stay pretty late and they're also located in Budapest too. So like if an issue came up and we couldn't figure it out, you can pick up the phone or start a support ticket, and then they would jump on that right away. So it's kind of like little things like that, like knowing who to go to when you need help is very important.
Yeah. What I found with when something's quite urgent, especially with these sorts of software, so it's usually one clip or a roll, clips on a roll that's giving you these problems. You figure out a way that will retain the metadata that you need, because there's about 5 ways of doing things in different settings. So you get a workaround to sort of work, So let's say, okay, color front as a problem, and there's you raise the support ticket, but they don't have a workaround. So you open it up in Resolve, and it works in Resolve. So you take only those clips, and you do a quick, make sure that the tape metadata is there, make sure that your metadata, the lens information, the camera information, the CDL, all of that, those things is there. And then you just get it out because it's urgent, right? Because the support ticket is already raised, and it's probably going to take 3-4 hours to sort of come to a head before, because it might be as something as simple as, somebody didn't, when they did the copy, it didn't verify correctly. So there's some other metadata that's now missing. And this other piece of software actually reads it correctly. So it's also knowing that there's other ways of doing things. I'm software agnostic. Like I do have my favorites, but if you throw me into, I have to do something only in Premiere Pro or only in Avid or only in Resolve, I'll make it work, right? Because this is the workflow, and that's what I'm. So, and I'm actually now doing quite a lot of recommending to youngsters, and I'm saying, guys, there is more than one NRE out there, and the more information you have about all these different nonlinear editors, you are actually only empowering yourself, because in a year's time, you'll pick up a job because you can say you can work on Resolve, or you can say you can work on Premiere, or you can say you can work on Avid,
Yeah, and it's so important, especially now that kind of format, like delivery formats are kind of morphing and changing, and there's so many streaming options out there. That's a big thing. Like with our department at Fox, it's like we're outputting to broadcast, yes, but then we're also outputting to streaming services. Then we're also outputting to Hulu, or to YouTube, or to TikTok, or to Facebook, or to Instagram, and like they're all different resolutions, and there's all these different options. And so like maybe one system or software is not the best way to go, because it can't, it's not as efficient as going into like Adobe for different resolution formats, or or going into Resolve for this, or or like, I think it's so important to know that you can jump between these different options to get the best product, or the best creative product that you can get, rather than limiting yourself because of the software.
I did some research, because I work in Africa, and mostly our frame rates are 25 frames a second. But this one job that I'm post supervising, they shoot in 2398, which is it's like basically your America's TV streaming type services in the States. And for some other reason, I think one of the deliverables was like 2997. Now, I because I've been at this for like 20 years, I had flashbacks of doing hardware frame rate conversions, and then so I researched this. I geeked out a little bit, because my first thought was Terranex, right? My second thought was there must be a software option. Like there must be a so I found a software option. And for the life of me, I can't remember what it was called, but there's a software option where you upload the file, and then it does this little conversion for you. I'll try to remember it.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I can't remember what it's called either. Shoot. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I have it somewhere in the email chain, right? And it's actually it's priced quite well, because it works out like, I think, $1 or $2 a minute, you know. The only problem comes in when you're doing like 10 episodes or 12 episodes, then it becomes quite hefty in price, you know. And if you didn't put the budget quite solidly on the money, you might actually run into hassles and run into issues. But it's also like I naturally want to learn everything that I can, right? I want to know everything, right? So when it comes to like, oh, you give me a challenge, I'm like, bring it.
That's awesome. Me too. I love that. That's really awesome. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of those issues right now, because Fox is technically your straightforward broadcast network. So a lot of our shows will go out 29.97, and a lot of them are shooting in 23.98. But then we have some that are like, let's do 59.94. But then we also have, you know, all our streaming like world where it's 23.98. And so it's like you're constantly doing these conversions, and we have, you know, great, or like you, or like we have to do the research to like figure out the best tool to use to convert those frame rates to make it look the best as possible. Because we're, you know, there's still like different shows want to shoot different ways. And, you know, we don't want to, but like, you don't want to force someone who's creative that wants a certain look to use a tool just because it's easier. You know, you want to guide them in a way that say, hey, this is going to look great if you go this way, and we can make it look this way. But sometimes, you're limited. A lot of times people will own their own cameras that they want to shoot with, and they want to shoot a certain way. And so there's a lot of like, okay, so we'll work with you and figure out the best workflow to make this show work in that way. And that was a big part of my job before in dailies, was like, we're going to find a workflow that fits with how you want your show to look. You know, we're not going to force you to just shoot with this camera, do this way. And because we can only do it this way, you know, it's a process, and you're working with all the different people on set and in post, and try to wrangle it all. And that's the fun part, right? Like, it's like doing all the investigation and figuring things out for people, and being there as a consultant.
What I've found with these sorts of things, so once you've done this for quite long, you know, and you have conversations with producers that don't know post. And most producers don't understand post. It's almost like it's the dark arts, you know, like they don't even understand what dailies is. Like, you know, like I always laugh, you know, when I get a director that calls me, when's the dailies going to be uploaded? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm busy with the dailies right now. No, the pics. So I'm like, okay. Oh, you mean the rushes? You know. So it's also like I'm constantly having to almost like educate. Like, what are you talking about? Like, ask the right questions to get to the answer that you actually. What is it? What you're really asking? You know. And I guess. What I find frustrating is because producers they don't know. My question really is that maybe why our post budgets are what they are, because they don't actually understand what we do, or is it like visions of grandeur, like we're trying to attain a Harry Potter, but we have a Sesame Street budget, you know? Is that such a thing?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. And it's I think it's going to become more and more interesting as everything is melded together, you know, when we have all these like you know, stages where you're going to be doing real-time effects, and you have to do a lot of pre-production, you know, pre-viz work that, you know, and you know, visual art department stuff, and I think that it's going to be kind of a wake-up call of like, oh, we have to start with post in pre-production and that has to be a big part of the budget because that's just, you know, the more that production and post is integrated technology wise, I think it's we have to educate the producers and the creative folks that aren't kind of aware of this side of it. And yeah, and it's important to, I think, to explain what dailies are and why they're important, and why it's essential to create a workflow and, you know, make sure that things are working on set as well, you know, because it's going to affect things down the line. I think, you know, it's kind of like a lost art with regards to like film. You had to prepare because you had a finite medium that to work on, so you could only shoot for so long. Whereas yeah, like digital,
well, it's also so expensive, you know.
Yeah.
It's not anything that you could really just go and what's the correct word? It was so expensive to buy the film, but not only that, it was also expensive to then develop the film, you know, and then you had to make prints of that, so because you couldn't cut with the original, you know, like, okay, so you had that, and it's almost like you know, it's, having a hard drive is now the equivalent of, or a Nexus, right, would be the equivalent of those prints, you know, that we have a duplicate of it, but it's not the original. So that's what the dailies department really does, you know. If I break it down to the most basic form of it, that's what the dailies department is. It's making a duplicate of the original, because we're not going to mess with the original. It's too big anyway. We don't have hard drives that big. We do, but we don't want the people to work with it. So we're going to keep it away from you. In case you press the delete button.
I mean, it's expensive too. And I think that's what people don't see in the front end, that it still costs money to store data and archive that data. And so, you know, the more you roll, the more expensive your costs are going to be. I mean, and the more time it's going to take.
The Tom Cruise Top Gun movie, 800 hours of footage. I mean,
oh, it's insane. Yeah. I don't know. Isn't that one of the most expensive movies ever made, right? Or yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Oh no, maybe
hashtag no spoilers.
I haven't seen it either. Actually, I think it's actually his next film, the Mission Impossible movie that's going to be like, because he's going to space.
It's quite interesting, you know, working with certain directors, that a director would latch onto an editor. And I was telling you about this movie that now won the Septimus Award. And this director just loves me. This director has latched onto me. So the next film that she's going to make, I'm going to cut with her. And so I find it quite interesting, you know, that sort of relationship, that trust, that that just
Mhm.
like, I know what you're thinking and I know where you're going, but this is not working.
Yeah. I always say like post people, because I dabbled a little bit in color correction. Like we're kind of like therapists for for like the director and the DP. Like, you almost want to be a therapist, like to interpret, like you said, like what they're trying to say, but in the visual platform.
Visual way, yeah.
Yeah. Like, or in a technical way, we're trying to interpret that. And read what they're kind of trying to tell us. So it's kind of like a therapy session in sorts, and have them build that trust so that they open up to us with their needs or, any issues or anything. Like, I think there's an art in itself to you building that relationship as an editor with a director. That's important. And then as like a colorist or a dailies colorist, a lot of times, relationships are built with DPs, and those DPs will want to keep coming back and working with that same dailies colorist or final colorist that likes to work with this dailies colorist all the time, and they'll stick together as a trio. And that's because they build that trust.
I've only worked on one film that had an on-set dailies colorist, and that was Tomb Raider. The dailies colorist's name was Josh, if I'm not mistaken. And he was absolutely lovely to work with. And I found that workflow quite interesting, because there was a couple of times where the DP saw the rushes on pics and he or the dailies on pics or whatever, the pics, they saw the pics. And so he's like, no, this is the wrong time of day. This should be day for night. So, so I got dailies the next day, and then of course a new ALE and all those things. And of course, this is now the first time that I'm redoing this into the Avid, and like taking the ALE and then re-merging, and all I'm thinking is, I hope I don't break this thing.
Color is very stressful. Like dailies color is so political, and I think that has been a big part of my job, is managing those politics, because a DP will want things a certain way, but a studio or a network may have a certain look that they always go for or that they prefer, or an executive producer has a certain way they want the show to look. And so there have been shows where it's gotten so controversial that either DPs have left or have been fired, or, and so dailies is a very essential point in that, to protect like the DP or the DIT on set, and while also trying to grade based on what the studio wants. So they're kind of like that middle person that has to deal with, the back and forth of politics, and it can get messy. And when you're stuck in the middle, sometimes you get blamed, but there's an art to that politics as well.
Yeah. Quite a lot of what we do is people management, is managing expectations, is managing budgets, is managing people, and a lot of people managing is also egos, and also like, because in your hands is this project, and this project could be $100 million, and it's a huge responsibility, and
that's the first thing everyone sees. Yeah.
I was on a 10-part series earlier this year, and I take my job quite seriously. In fact, if there's a problem, I would more than likely lay awake at night worrying about it. It's who I am. It's not something you can turn off. It's there. Even though if I am tired, I would go home. It doesn't mean that my brain stops working,
Yeah.
And I think there's more people like that in the industry than people that doesn't give a damn, like I think the reason why we do what we do in post is because we love seeing things coming together. We want the product to succeed, and we basically give our lives to creating this thing. It's almost like you give birth, and I would imagine like your producer and your writer and your director all say, oh, we give birth. But in post, it really gets made, like when you get the dailies, you start seeing, like small little sparks of, oh, this is actually what it could be. But the moment that it gets to post and you start seeing rough cuts and assemblies and director's cuts and that sort of thing, you kind of go, I had no idea how cool this is.
It's so satisfying. It's funny. And I think that's a testament to why, you've been doing it for 20 years and I've been doing it for almost 15. And yeah, it's, that passion and determination and drive that, and that satisfaction, we have a product that you see at the end that's there, and yeah. And even if it's terrible, you're still like, I made that. It's amazing. We did all this work.
There is a few, however, that I never want to mention that I worked on.
Yeah.
And I think we all have that little black book of projects. The nice thing about doing those projects, and like I said, I want to learn from whatever I do, right? Mm-hmm. So even on the projects that was the crappiest crap under the sun, either emotionally or physically, or the project was just crap. You walk away from a project learning something. And if you walk away from a project learning something, even if it is, maybe I should never work with that person again, you've learned something,
Yeah, totally.
It's life skills that you'll never, ever not have, I don't really have mentors, but really like colleagues that I put in very high esteem, So the one colorist that I work with, like whenever I'm thinking about like a work, he's very technical. So him and I geek out quite a lot. So and he works in baseline, I work in Resolve. So whenever we sort of speak about something like color transforms or ACES workflows or that sort of thing, I would bounce it off him. And so it's not necessarily having a mentor, but rather saying, you more than likely know as much as me or know something that I don't know.
It's interesting. Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but
no, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I listened to this podcast the other day, and the guy on the podcast brought up the idea of like co-mentors, where you find someone that doesn't know that knows something you don't know, and then you have something they don't know, and you share that information. And like what I've found too is like trying to be a mentor is that like I get just as much out of it as I hope that my mentee is. And I hear that a lot. I've been involved with the HPA Young Entertainment Professionals program, which pairs young professionals with mentors. And a lot of times every time the mentor always says, I've gotten just as much out of this as they have. I've learned something, and it doesn't matter the age or anything, it's I think it's like you say, like you find someone even in your circle that may have information that you you don't know that you would love to learn about, and you meet with them, and then you can also offer information that, because there's always something, no matter what your age is. And I think that's so important. And I think giving back, helps tighten that relationship with that mentor as well. So whereas maybe a formal mentorship is very hard to find, and especially like it sometimes is a privileged situation where you can be paired with a mentor specifically. I think that people in general can just find people in their lives that can guide them in certain areas, and then you'd give back by also kind of reciprocating with your information, your knowledge, your wisdom, or whatnot, back to them. So yeah, I love that idea that you're going to your colorist, and then you can share your Resolve knowledge back with them, and it's cool. As a mentee, you have to be involved, and not just take. Like, you're not gonna develop a relationship as a mentee if you're just like, hey, tell me this, and then and then don't share information, don't open up to that person, like, even if it's just letting them know about yourself. And I found, like, there's been some folks who try to get a mentor, and then they just don't show up. They don't participate. They don't even reach out. And they're like, oh, my mentor didn't talk to me. And I'm like, but you have to reach out.
I think that's a very important thing that you're mentioning, is that your mentor won't reach out to you. You reach out to the mentor, because right, it doesn't work the other way around. We're not in a parent-child relationship here, so it's not working that way around. I think the best way I can describe it is, I had some of these youngsters that did my course, and they actually wanted to come and shadow me. And so sometimes you work on things that's got NDA. So, sorry, you can't come. Sorry, you can't come. Sorry, you can't come. And I promise you, for 3 months, this guy literally hounded me. Like, when can I come? When can I come? When can I come? And like, you almost have to be, when you want a mentor relationship, you have to be tenacious. Like, I want to spend time with you. I want to come and shadow you. Can I drink coffee with you? Can I, like, you have to literally almost be that way inclined of actually saying, okay, I'm not just going to try once or twice, because life happens, and in post, life happens all the time.
It's an extremely busy industry, and there's like little moments where people will be like, oh, maybe I do have a little bit of time to chat with you, but yeah, being persistent without being annoying, but like being persistent is important. Reaching back out every couple weeks or something, just to check in, or even just making it simple for your mentor, like, oh, you don't have time to meet, can you answer this question in an email for me, or something like that is helpful. I think, especially in this industry too, that mentor-mentee relationship is super important, because it's and like, there's a question here all about networking. That's part of the networking. You have to reach out and ask questions and be curious, and people are excited to talk about themselves when they have the time. So usually, unless they're not friendly at all, they'll be willing to answer some question. And and so, like you said, be persistent, and just curious and open, and reach out.
Yeah. I've been part of the Blue Collar Post Collective for quite a while. I joined the Facebook group, and whenever I see like a question which is like all geeky and like somebody is asking a question like, what would you do? I think to myself, you know, like when I see a question like that, I kind of go, I want to help. And I think a lot of people in the post industry think the same way, you know, and unless you're of the opinion you don't want to share your knowledge, which is not, I don't think anybody with that sort of mindset would be in the blue collar post collective. So ask the questions, seek people out, and don't give up. Like research, watch the YouTube tutorials, test things, be like curious, and never ever stop learning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just keep learning. Everything's changing so quickly.
Oh yeah,
everything. You be like Danny. Learn everything you can. Keep learning. Ask. Yeah, no question is too stupid or dumb, or you know, people are afraid to ask questions. And I'm of the mindset of embarrass yourself and have fun and learn from that. You know. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Payton, I think because I'm sure you've got a full day ahead of you, and I've got it's already a dark outside on my side. Thank you so much for your time. And I know you've been busy. I know I've been busy, and I hope we stay in touch because I really enjoyed this.
I was gonna just say the same thing. Let's please like stay in touch, and hopefully I can come back out to Cape Town again, and you can make it out to Los Angeles. Yes.
Yeah. And then I'll show you around.
That would be awesome. Yeah. No, it's so beautiful. I definitely need to go back. All right. Well, thank you, and have a good night.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.